Howdy, Compelled Unbeliever here. Welcome to Compelling Thoughts by Compelled Unbeliever. Today we're going to talk about the Virgin Mary and the immaculate conception story. Mary was not some girl that just came up with a fantastic story that took root and became a religion. It just got real.
Oh, wow.
There were many gods that had miraculous conceptions and were dying and resurrecting gods at the time of Jesus. If Jesus was to be considered a deity at the time, he had to at least keep up with the Joneses or the Goddesses, as it may be. Now, there are two thoughts on Jesus: the historicalist that believes that Jesus was a historical person, and the mysticist that believes that Jesus was completely a myth. As a historian, I don't really care about whether Jesus was a human being or not. I just want to look and analyze the traditions themselves. The Greek Septuagint was the translation that the writers of the Bible used to interpret the Hebrew, and there was a mistranslation from the word young woman in Hebrew to Greek, which became virgin. And this was very convenient for the Christians because now they had a historical reference, so to speak, at least a biblical reference from the scripture, that there was a virgin birth, which aligned with all the other gods that they were competing with. It is very, very unlikely. In fact, we have proof within the Bible itself that Mary just didn't make up this story. We don't even know that Mary was an actual person. Paul, the person that wrote the earliest documents we have in the Bible, is completely unaware of a virgin birth. He never mentions it. In Mark, we have a Messiah that is baptized and called the Son of Man. And at this point in time, he may or may not be deified. It's really unclear, except for that he is called the Son of God. Once we get to later books, Luke and Matthew, he becomes more and more godlike. And when the latest book is written, John, he is a full-fledged God. In the very beginning, it says that he was always God. It's very interesting that in the earliest book of the Gospels, Mark, there is no birth narrative at all when he is the Messiah figure. Once we get to Matthew and Luke, all of a sudden there are birth narratives, but they are very, very different. The only thing that they really have in common is that it was a virgin birth. Jesus' mother's name was Mary. Joseph was the stepfather. And that's about it. It shows us that there were actually varying traditions even at the time that Matthew and Luke were written, and they were written relatively close together. So this is probably a result of geographical differences where the stories varied to geography and the distances being very far between the two authors of those books. The most likely thing that did happen was Jesus started out as a rabbi. He morphed into a Messiah figure and then was later deified after his death, if he did live. Either way, this character, fictional or not, was deified of Jesus. Then later had to write a historicalized narrative to explain how Jesus did become a god, or how he was already a god when he came to earth, in John's account, the latest account. So it's very, very clear that there is a huge evolution in this Jewish Messiah cult. And thus we get the virgin birth story and the story is about Mary. Mary did not make up the story. The story was made up about Mary. Just remember, it's just a book.